broke, trying to cope, not focused on shit. Always scoped on the fix that is fixed to our wrist. And the cyst that persists from the clicks that we get is a ship that's adrift in the midst of the grift. What a trick, what a gift. What I miss? Shit. Ignorance is bliss, bliss.
Welcome to the realm where they complicate pursuits, confiscate the truth to indoctrinate the youth. Got us hopped up on the juice cause the doctor's about to loot. Posture of imposters cause our options are acute. Playing possum for the boot, it's lost in the obtuse. You constantly and constant for the optics you can prove. Animosity's the obstacle that obfuscates from you.
All right, welcome to the inaugural episode of the new Dystopia podcast. I am D-Web, and I'm joined by my knowledgeable, vivacious, the one and only and super smart Amy B. How you doing, Amy?
Hello, I am doing good.
It's good to see you. And on this podcast, we take a deep dive into topics underlying causes and effects that mainstream intentionally or unintentionally ignores. And I am highly honored on this first episode. So we jumping out the box, doing it big to me. This person right here is a legend in the conspiracy. I want to say analyst because I don't think we're theorists no more because it seems like everything is coming true. But she's pretty much a legend. One of the people I was first got into listening to their propaganda report. So I got to introduce the one and only Miss Monica Perez. Monica, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Thank you so much. It is really an honor and a privilege to be a part of this inaugural episode.
I appreciate you coming through. And like I said, it's almost like getting like Michael Jordan to play pickup ball with you, you know.
Only because everything I said came true. That's what freaks people out. And I didn't even think it was going to be this bad, honestly.
Yeah.
It keeps happening. Keep calling us conspiracy theorists, and then lo and behold.
I won't even accept that anymore because I'm like, look, absolutely nothing I believe doesn't have evidence. I throw some speculation out there, like what happens at Bohemian Grove? I don't know. Are they there? I could see it with my own eyes. So there's no theory. They're all getting together. If they're cooking it up with aliens or something, that I just don't know. But I'm sure they're cooking something up. There's no theory about that.
Ridiculous. So just a brief introduction. I know I gave you the little intro that I pretty much gave you a props as a legend, but for those who don't know who you are, maybe unfamiliar with your platform, and just like a brief synopsis of what brought you to start your podcast and things of that nature, if you can do a brief intro like that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. I really had no interest in broadcasting. It would never even cross my mind. And I met a radio producer and one thing led to another. And she just thought it was very interesting because I had just recently discovered like Murray Rothbard and Hans Hermann Hoppe. And I just was like, oh, the Democrat Republican thing is just a scam. Like it's all ridiculous and society is self-ordering. I was like, there was a time when you couldn't question the existence of God. And now you're not allowed to question the necessity of government, but it's bull. And she was just wowed by that. And one thing led to another, she got me on the radio. It was so long ago, though, it's like 10 years ago, that I wasn't really a threat to anybody. It was just kind of a novelty act. And the fact that I was dead serious, they thought that was just hilarious. And it was basically a family-owned radio station, even though it was big in Atlanta, WSB, and it had this great program director who used to work with Art Bell and everything, just loved my stuff. Well, 8.5 years later, which was about a year and a half ago, that company sold to a bigger company or financial investor. And I kind of saw that I didn't know if it was going to keep going like it was going. So my producer on that show and I started a podcast, a daily show, because it just didn't look like we were going to get it. We were only on the weekends. Didn't look like we were going to get a daily show. It didn't even look like we would necessarily have our show for very long. And prior to that, with my great program director and the family owners, they didn't care at all about the content. I mean, the scales fell off my eyes when I had to cover the Boston Marathon bombing on the air. And I was like, wait, yesterday they said it was totally different. And today, and there's no retraction. I'm looking in the newspaper like, it's so stupid. I thought they would retract like all the made up stuff. And I would just blow by blow on the air and they were fine with it. And then, in February of 2020, when Event 201, I was like, oh my gosh, like this isn't 2 weeks, this is 18 months. And oh my gosh, you don't believe it. And I remember Binkley and I kind of came up with this together, although he probably articulated it better first, which was like, this isn't an earthquake or a hurricane or flood. This is a war. So this thing is going to be here for 18 months. It's longer than that already. And the purpose is to like really fundamentally change the culture. So when we started talking about that in February 2020, I mean, we didn't make it till the end of the month and we were gone, but we covered 2 other things in depth, or 3: Epstein, Stacey Abrams, and also election integrity. Like the only guest I ever had was an election integrity activist, and all that stuff was centered in Atlanta. And a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's was the one who bought the station and later actually stepped down by being associated with him. Not that it ever got to that level. Like he was super huge and he was not paying attention to me, but like it was a changing of the guard. And then, so we started doing the podcast, and the value of doing the radio was that I was reaching people who weren't otherwise going to hear this stuff. And Atlanta is a very diverse community. So I was easily blowing up stereotypes because people would call in. So CNN wants to tell you what people are thinking based on the color of their skin. But these people would call from all walks of life, all classes, all colors, all creeds, and just give their opinion, their observation, their experience. And that was really powerful because that really broke through the propaganda. Now, you know, I feel like we're kind of in the tunnels. We're trying to educate each other, and that has value. And a lot of those old people from Atlanta still listen to the podcast, which is great. But now I do a daily show called the Drive Time News Blast with Binkley, and we try to bring the news of the day from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice, using what we learned in radio about kind of hitting the headlines, pacing, and because we want to give people an alternative to all of that propaganda and the spin and the agenda. And I only knew that it was necessary because when I was on the air, I used to try to find those resources, and I had to just do it all myself. And I kind of learned how to do it. I call it truth dar. I could read the mainstream media and pull out the facts and figure out an agenda they might be pushing that made those facts make more sense than the weird nonsensical spin that they actually put on it in those mainstream media sources. And that's it. And here we are.
Fast forward, hit the fast forward button.
Yeah. Speaking of event 201, they now have a cyber polygon. So and it's also a run through event of, in the event that this happened. So
we have that on our list of stuff to look into, but it's the World Economic Forum. I think it probably has 5 hours of video, just like the Event 201 stuff. And you got to plow through it. That's the hard thing of doing a daily show. I used to really, because I only had a weekend show, I would spend 20 hours preparing for a 3-hour show that was half commercials. And now it's kind of the opposite. And I really don't get as much time to do the super, super deep dives, but that is definitely on our short list.
Yeah. So I'm sure that we'll have in the future, probably not too distant future, there'll be some sort of cyber type of event where everything goes down in some sort of emergency, and they'll have to enact the PrEP emergency initiative again, but for cyber. And of course, you know, the only entities that can fix it would be government and the very large corporations.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing you always see is you need the people who are maybe, you know, responsible for creating the responsibility. Now they're coming to help. Now they're the cavalry, right? That's the way it kind of works. You know, you create the crisis in order to fix the crisis. And in the meantime, you grab power. I kind of want to hit too, because I know you was talking about you were one of the things that kind of draw me to you, or what stood out, particularly in this conspiracy realm, is that you were actually on the mainstream radio. You were actually on Atlanta radio, which is very rare coming in this space and talking about the things that we talk about. But if you look now, there is no dissenting voices at all. Everything is highly curated. People are talking in code just to keep their YouTube videos up. So I kind of wanted to segue that into how, you know, you think the mainstream media is complacent and probably this dystopia and bring about anxiety. I want to say Bill Maher recently was on one of those late night shows. Was it Jimmy Kimmel? And he was responding and talking about how even him, Mr. You know, give $1 million to Hillary, you know, he was even talking about how basically because of the media mostly, that you have like over half this country, or a ridiculous amount, close to 70% of this country believes that if you get the bug, I hope people know what I'm talking about, that it's what 50% chance you might end up hospital, of coin flip, where you end up, where it's more like 1% or less for most of the healthy population. So I just kind of want to think, where do you think mainstream is going, and what do you think the future prospects, and do you think that's great for people like us so we can grow in terms of being outside of the mainstream narrative?
I'll say a couple of things. One is, I know like memos came down. If you are going to talk about the election, that was the first thing, the big censorship stuff, like all the radio stations, they got a memo. If you're going to talk about the election, then just don't even bother showing up for work, because you'll be fired. And I can't help but think that Lou Dobbs was like, hey, see you tomorrow. And then we didn't see him tomorrow because he was taken down. He was fired from, I don't know what it was, Fox or something. I don't even know who he worked for, but it was a mainstream thing. And I really feel like it's because he was continuing to probe into the election thing. So there was that first purge. And then I feel like the vaccine mandates. Oh, sorry. You want to just, we need a
You're
code
all right.
word.
We'll
Just
be
bleep it like it's a dirty word. So the bleep mandates will come out, and what they will do is it just eliminates anybody who isn't willing to capitulate. It's not necessarily true believers, but you don't really need true believers, because there are plenty of people who aren't true believers who feel like for whatever reason they have to compromise. And I don't judge those people. I absolutely do not. Like, I think Andrew Wiggins versus Jonathan Isaac, I'm not sure Jonathan Isaac's going to be able to make it. Like, they both objected to it, and Wiggins got it, and Isaac, so far, last I heard, did not. But I totally understand people have to make those decisions. But once they have made those decisions, made the choice to be in the room with you, then they've already made the worst choice they could ever make. What could you possibly throw at them that then they were going to fall on their sword for? Nothing. So they've already made it so everyone will just chill themselves, be compliant themselves. And I think that's the curation. It's that backdoor fascism thing. It's just where they don't actually make the law, but they make so many rules that the only survivors are the ones who will do whatever you want in the end.
I do wonder about, so the push for kids and going younger and younger, that I do wonder if that's going to be a pretty big issue for them. Because I know, I mean, so many parents, even if they've gotten the vaccine, they are they're just not about getting the vaccine for their kids.
Can you tell me what region of the country you live in?
I'm in Texas.
Okay.
Texas.
I'll be back in Texas. I lived in Texas for a long time. My husband's from Texas. We're hoping to. I want to move to Dripping Springs. That's where I want to go.
Oh, gorgeous there.
That's where I want to go. So, but I live in LA right now, and my kids go to 3 different schools. But the one really fancy, like the best school my kids go to, is a private school, and 99% of the high school kids are vaccinated. And my son got a religious exemption, which was absolutely sincere. And they really, to their credit, accepted it without question. But I couldn't believe it. I was like, well, you rich people are shooting your kids up with this shit. Like, you only have like 2 kids, right? You're making little supercomputers. You know, my mom had 9 kids. So I think she probably had 10 or 11, and she just like lost track of a couple of them. But these people are having 2 kids that really, they're putting a lot of effort into these 2 kids. And it surprises me that they all went for that. So I don't know what it is. I guess it has to do with trusting the plan. And I would say there are plenty of people in Texas who they don't trust this plan, but they would trust a different plan. Like, you never really should trust without being able to figure out the real answer. But I kind of wonder if the kid thing, I hear you that, like, you know, let's see if they will capitulate on that. But as a little side note, I kind of wonder if so only Pfizer is allowed to people under 18, I think. And it seems to be the worst one for like a million reasons. It's just the worst one. And I almost kind of wonder if they're using it as like, you know how the Chinese one child policy was like for a defined amount of time, and it just reset the population by basically making all of those people only have one kid. I kind of wonder if they're just taking this segment, this demographic, this generation, you know, whatever, the 5 to 15-year-olds, and just sterilizing it or whatever. So like that you have this demographic bust. And then after the truth comes out, they don't have to do it anymore. People won't do it anymore, but they'll have done that. I really have no idea. I have no like reason to think that other than the way the reproductive organs seem to interact with this thing. Seems like a real thing for sure. And the bug itself also, I think, has that kind of, so I don't know what people will do, but it feels like this is what they're up to.
But if you look at it, oh, my bad to cut you off, Amy.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
But what I was a point I was making to somebody, I said, if you look at the overall what's going on, your kid has a better chance of dying on the bus ride to school than they do of the bug, which was a big factor with zero long-term data. You have no clue what it's going to do 10 years from now. So, and then for the guy, I know you were out there on the West Coast, for that guy to just say, before it's even approved, right? Like, we're mandating it. I don't care. Like, as soon. So you're assuming, you're not even, that you're kind of invalidating the whole process, because you're like,
I can't get my hair cut.
Yeah.
I can't get my hair cut anymore. Like, I feel very oppressed by that.
Come to the Sunshine State. You can do whatever the hell you want.
Oh, wow. You guys are
West.
both in free countries for now.
Yeah, for now.
No masks. I don't wear a mask in the store.
Yeah, I would, you know, but we have the same kind of thing where it's, you know, you have to make a living, and not everybody has an interchangeable situation, and things take time. And I always think of it this way. It's like, you're asking people, I stay at home. So I have this joke. I'm an agoraphobic agorist. So I hate going out, but I'm like a total philosophical agorist. I think we should, you know, free markets, anarchy, but I don't want to go out anyway. So I don't care. I have this privileged position. But there are people who either, like the young people, have to give up their hopes and dreams, or established people have to give up their life's work. I mean, you just can't always move around. And the idea of voting with your feet, I came back from that a little bit, because you have every right to be liberated on the piece of ground or the community that is yours, whether it's something that you bought or if it's the community you grew up in. I feel like you shouldn't have to move to have liberty and justice. Of course, I'm trying to. I actually want to go back, and we're kind of from Texas originally, my husband anyway, but I feel like eventually there isn't even going to be any place to run to. And I worry about that. Hopefully it'll just pass. Like, you know, I don't know.
Definitely.
See, I do wonder about that, because what I suspect would actually be more likely is that you will have the places like California and New York, where the people who are just all about this, little fascists running around saying my body, my choice, except, you know, I'm going to tell you medically what to do, medically what you need to put in your body. And
I just burst out laughing. I saw some really adamant chick, like, man, I just started laughing. I was like, are you talking about the vaccine? It's like, what? Yeah. I was like, oh, I couldn't even know what she was talking about. It's like, I didn't, with the shaved head, I thought maybe, I couldn't believe you're an anti-vaxxer, but it's just like,
it amazes me that do people just not have critical thinking abilities anymore, or it's just they're inundated with the same message religion. Over and over?
This is a religion.
It is absolutely a religion. Started, in my opinion, with like the critical race theory, critical theory, and has just continued to.
I don't even know what that is. What is that? Can someone define that for me?
Did you see the interview with the Virginia governor? They asked him the same exact question to
Terry
define
McAuliffe, the guy who's running. There's like a Youngkin is a guy, a Republican running. McAuliffe is the Democrat running.
Yes.
Are you talking about somebody running or the existing guy?
The existing guy, I believe.
Okay.
But he was
No, I mean,
they
he's
asked
going.
him,
Yeah.
they asked him to define it, right? And he's like, there's nobody's teaching critical race theory, you know. They's like, all right, so we'll define it in your words, right? Define what it is. He's like, I'm not even gonna waste my time because nobody's teaching it. And he refused to even, you know, define what it is. Double speak, you know.
They like to they say, oh, that's not being taught, that's an obscure legal legal study really pioneered by Derek Bell. And yes, technically that's true, but this is critical race theory in practice. Basically,
what you're going to tell me what it is?
Yeah, basically what the theory boils down to is these systems where there's differences and disparities, that there is an underlying systemic racism, and it is just due to the system itself. It's not an overt act by anyone. And POC, people of color, and BIPOC, basically the more oppressed you are on their little hierarchy of oppression,
it's a victim culture, yo. It's
so here's
but if you are a Black trans conservative, then that actually puts you as a white supremacist.
Yeah, like Christian Walker. Christian Walker probably like blows their mind. Yo, he's like most flamboyant.
Here's what I think about that. Not that you asked me, but what I think is this: that it was probably true because of just the nature of geography and transportation and empire and conquest, that absolutely the power, the oppression, and everything always went along racial lines, and that would interact for a very long time as the remnants of that. And that now, at this moment, maybe the first moment, but at this moment, we're all in the same boat. It's like the plebs and the overlords. And there's just I'm not happy. I don't feel liberated. And that because now that's no longer the operative lever of control, then they, big T, they can point to that and have us all focus on that and act like they're championing that. It's like talking about Epstein now. It's too late. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what happens with Epstein now. He's gone, or wherever he is. I don't know. Those people are damaged. You're not stopping that system. But if you spend a lot of time worrying about that, you aren't really looking ahead. You're looking behind. And it's possible that that's why, because that's what I think about all this race stuff. Like, I look at it and I think the World Economic Forum, what was happening the other day that I was like, these fucking guys. Out here in Hollywood, there's a strike. There's 150,000 strike around the world, like stagehands and stuff. And they work like 12 hours a day. They make $15 an hour. They don't get any food. They're getting screwed out of their like regular contractual wage because everything's being called like streaming. And if it's streaming, they don't make as much because of a deal they cut like 12 years ago. This is as I understand that problem. I could be wrong, but that's what I think it is. I'm an anarchist. I'm not like a big business proponent, whatever. But when you look at, so there's the labor union, and then there's the consortium of producers like MGM and Disney and Apple, and they're fighting back at these people. I'm like, you are all the people, like literally, that is the media that's jamming all the shit down our throats. And you're telling us that we're bad because of the color of our skin or our status or any whatever, sexuality, I don't know. You're telling us that we're bad. All you're doing is making stuff, visualizing entertainment that makes us feel bad. The Gillette commercial. And you can't put your money where your mouth is. So you're obviously full of shit. I could give you like 10 different examples of that, 100. So they're definitely not fostering Black Lives Matter and any of the other programs because they really care about equality. And maybe, I mean, I have a theory that it's actually the opposite. So when I lived in Atlanta, and there's so many people in the Black community would call me, whether they had the same ideology as me or not, but they understood truth. They were like, yes, we understand lies. That was a very powerful demographic of people who'd been in this country for 100, 150 years. So they know how it works. They understand the foundational documents. They speak the language. They've heard the lies. Their families, they have that legacy, a heritage of, the parents telling me, don't believe that. I've been there before, so that's very powerful. And maybe by co-opting all these liberal college professors and like rich white teenage girls into this program, Black Lives Matter or whatever, it's meant to actually blow up that heritage. So that's why I think you look critical race theory or whatever. It's really never, in my opinion, about any of the justice that they say it's about. It's really about focusing us on stuff that no longer matters.
Sun Tzu's Art of War, right?
Yeah, BLM has always been a Marxist front, kind of prettied up behind, we're for helping Black people. It's like, but are you? Because
Marx was commissioned by a bunch of capitalists in London. I think he wrote it in London. So it was just another way to get people to a vortex of all the money and power to the top as people were starting to wake up to how it works. You give them a different system, but with the same effect. I mean, even World War II, all of that, world at war, 60 million people dying, and the money flows never stopped. And if you go back and look at Event 201, there's one of the 7 calls to action on the Johns Hopkins, it's a PDF, it's just a couple of pages, but one of them is about making sure the money flows don't stop. And I was like, are they gearing us up for a war? Now I realize this is the war, but the money flows aren't. I mean, look at how that money just kind of sucked up and all those billionaires got more billionaire. I sound like somebody who hates rich people. I absolutely don't. I would love to be a rich person. I would like to hang out with rich people. If you're a rich person, give me a call.
That's if you're providing a service though. If you're providing something tangible and you get profit from that, that's fine. But if you're playing the fractional reserve banking game and capitalizing off that, then no, that's not an honorable way of making money.
That's why I can't call myself an anarcho-capitalist anymore, because capital itself doesn't even mean what it used to mean. Fiat money is just made up. It's crazy. I mean, I could call myself an anarcho gold bug, but I don't,
I'm sure that the goal is to phase out the dollar and bring in the IMF. I can't remember what it's called, but basically a global form of currency that will be easily tracked, and it'll be at the global level, and we're talking unelected officials essentially controlling all of this. In my opinion, I think China is the model that they're wanting to base kind of society off of.
Yep, that's big facts. And even if you look at Bitcoin is not a security coin. Bitcoin can easily be tracked, right? The problem is the people who have profited from Bitcoin are the people they want to have that amount of wealth. So they have to slow that down. They have to slow that growth down so they can get, if you look up right now on different exchanges, countries are already putting their digital coin up there. So it's already being transitioned. All the plans are already kind of in place. You already know. That's why I think I always a proponent of chess. I love people play chess, right? Because you got the 3 moves ahead. That's why people like in the conspiracy realm was saying in 2020 what would happen in 2021, right? I have people call me today that's like, oh, you predicted that? Are you a clairvoyant? Like, oh, are you an empath? No, they tell you what they're gonna do, right? And that's why, when old Sleepy is what I call him, old Sleepy went up there and to kind of segue when he called like, all right, we're gonna end this war on terror, right? But he told you we have a new domestic enemy, right? A new domestic terrorist. What's our greatest enemy right now? White supremacy. What is that? What does that even mean? You just had a black guy.
I don't know what that means either. I'm like, is that just a state of mind? In which case, live with your delusions. But I don't understand. It's like one of them said to advocate for white supremacy. I'm like, what does that sound like?
Welcome to critical race theory.
Oh.
There you go.
Yep.
It's a bunch of gibberish that makes no sense. They want everybody to identify. And what I told people, I said, you're going to be fighting the race war in the gulags. Okay, you're probably
Yes,
gonna have
yes.
one side
They
black,
do.
one side
Right in prison.
Yeah,
That's where it's
prison.
alive
That's
as
what it
well.
is. That's
Yeah.
exactly what you're getting at this point, where you're gonna be fighting this race theory. You need to realize that it's elitist versus, versus the
know.
99%. It's not
Us
what you
versus
think it is.
them.
Yes, it's the war has shifted. Now, you hit it on earlier. 100 years ago, it might have been relevant. Yes, it was divided along racial lines, but they've shifted that war. And now they're using that pain, they're using that emotional, because people, when you talk about race, when you talk about slavery, when you talk about these things, it's very emotional subjects. So what they did is they just swapped that and switched that around and used that to fund what's going on, to push their different theories and push their different what's to come, and people are not recognizing that, and they're still fighting along racial lines. So it's like you're just welcoming, you're welcoming the dystopia, to plug the name of the podcast. That's a good plug.
Well, and the bigger issue with so the January 6th, that was just a gift. They
Tour.
wanted that gift.
The tour.
They angled, they manufactured that gift, and so now they're using it to be able to usher in insurrectionists, these domestic terrorists. So we need to have in these bills all these provisions. This is an emergency. And you can go back to after 9/11, a lot of the bills and acts that were put into place, these are being expanded, but they're now expanding the definition of terrorism to include a very nebulous domestic terrorism. And all those provisions would apply. You're losing due process. They can they don't have to release any, as far as like evidence. They can say that it is due to a security risk. They can't present that evidence in court, so you're losing a right to trial, and also you're losing your right to privacy. You don't have to actually there doesn't have to be a court warrant or anything to be spied on if you're within this web of domestic terrorism. So it's basically, and people are so focused on the camps that they're in that they're just like, oh yeah, throw the kitchen sink at it and let's get those white supremacists. And it's like, okay, you do realize that what you're doing is you're throwing away your right to due process, essentially.
Well, it's kind of already been thrown out the window.
I have so many things to say about what you just said. Will that get us off track if I respond to what you just said? Come on, D, can I?
Hey, it's your world. I am just observing in awe. Go ahead. If you got a tangent, go off on it.
Okay. So just point by point, starting from the beginning of this little segment, Obama, I was very disappointed in him because he could have done some healing, and instead he and Eric Holder just like ramped it up. Yeah. I remember I did a show on the Warrior Cop, which was about militarizing the police, and everybody was shoulder to shoulder. I never had more agreement on the air. And then they did like, I don't know what it was, the Trayvon Martin or something. But I heard Eric Holder say that he was trying to make it a big deal. But Trump, I'm also disappointed in because he, after all those decades where it never worked, he did bring identity politics to the right. He did do that. And I was not happy with that. I hate plea bargains. I think that what they do is, and Tommy Chong is the perfect example of that. He went to jail for something he wasn't even accused of because they entrapped his son into selling artistic glass hand blown or whatever, face blown, I guess, bongs across, like really entrapped him. Watch the movie, AKA Tommy Chong. Then they threatened his son and wife with 99 years in jail for making a piece of glass. And what was he supposed to do? They were like, don't even go to trial because he wasn't even accused. Like he wasn't even gonna, they're like, if you will agree to go to jail for a year, we won't try to put your wife and child in jail for 99 years. Same thing with Lori Loughlin. She gave a huge charitable contribution to a scholarship fund that she thought was legitimate, and they threatened her with 40 years if she didn't say she was sorry. I mean, that kind of stuff. I hate plea bargains. I know I'm a libertarian and everyone should have a right to do whatever they want, but that is a complete setup. And in my opinion, it is, I'm going to
Agreed.
call it unconstitutional. And then as far as taking people's rights away, like you were saying, it's like in a massive slippery slope. And that's why libertarians didn't like Guantanamo. And people were like, well, they're terrorists. Like, but if they're terrorists, why don't you just convict them? And I actually think that they were kept in there not because they were terrorists. Well, they might have been terrorists, but because they were probably on the inside and knew information. So you couldn't actually take them to court, because then you'd have to reveal that information, or you wouldn't get a conviction because they actually didn't do anything illegal because they were in on it. You just kept them there forever without their rights. And that was the beginning of no rights. And I would just point out two other people, Joe Naccio, who ran Quest Communications back in the day. Bush wanted warrantless wiretaps. All the other telecom companies capitulated, but this guy, he said, I won't do it. And they got him on insider trading charges. He went to jail for 4 years. This was like a CEO of a huge company. And he said that in his trial, he could have proven that they did it in retaliation for him not cooperating with their unconstitutional request, but they wouldn't let him bring that evidence to bear because national security. And then if you look at Ross Ulbricht, who's in jail forever ×2 for doing nothing at all, the two DEA agent and the Secret Service guy who were investigating him were both guilty of malfeasance, went to jail for it, and he wasn't allowed to bring that up in his trial for whatever reason. I don't know. So this whole thing about January 6th was, in my opinion, there was not a single solitary, genuine bad actor there other than the people who were ginning this thing up on purpose. That now I was not able to. I had a friend who went and she said, oh, put all my video up. It was very peaceful. It was like a festival. And at the last minute, I didn't, because I was like, maybe people won't like that. And then I realized like all those people would be doxxed, blah, blah, blah. But now we don't have any video of how peaceful that was. Imagine if they weren't doing that, we would have tens of thousands of hours of everybody's video with like no violence in it whatsoever. But they've chilled us from doing that because they're persecuting people. And then because they're threatening them with these like ridiculously long sentences that it's absolutely all you have to do is plead guilty. You don't even have to go to jail. But if you go to trial and you lose, you're going to jail forever. I mean, I've seen that where people like go to jail forever for being entrapped. So no one will ever go to trial again, basically. And they can make all these false flags. They can railroad people. And when they have that, what I consider to be double jeopardy from the federal, state, local level, or like call one action, like 10 different crimes, they can pile all those sentences together. It's a post-constitutional system at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. This entire past year, January 6th, is really not that I put a lot of thought into the aftermath of 9/11 and a lot of the systems that were put into place, but this has really highlighted to me how awful that was in Guantanamo, how terrible that those policies were put into place. And at that time, it was the right that was championing it. Oh, terrorists, and yeah, we have to lock them up and get them. And no, they shouldn't even see a courtroom, et cetera, et cetera. And it's the exact same playbook. They're actually using the same policies and laws that were put into place to focus on the January 6th, and they're expanding what the definition of terrorism is to now include nebulous domestic actors who are white supremacists, very ill-defined term, essentially to be able to
they might just
persecute.
Say Trump voters. We want to get rid of the Trump voters.
Well, that's
and I think a lot of to tie this back together, what you two were saying, it kind of brings the industrial prison complex, this whole system to the mainstream. To throw a little bit of my background out there, I'm from Chicago. I had a kind of tumultuous growing up. I was in the streets where I probably shouldn't have been. But a lot of the things they doing now, which we kind of been warning as I, went about my journey through life, went through the military, went through this, and then became, a good citizen, right?
Solid.
But what I was trying to warn people about is like, we've been trying to say, like, you have a lot of bad actors, you have a lot of people, and a lot of the things they are doing, they're going to try to flip that, right? It's almost like the ghetto, the hood, the urban areas were test sites, like you see Australia, like right now, right? It's almost like it was test sites to try different things, right? So now what they've done now is, you would think these people, the blue crowd, now that the fight has turned onto the right, you think that would bring more so people together. Now you can see what they are doing, right? It's big business locking people up. It's big business to sentence people to these. It's also very controlling, like you said, with the plea bargains, right? That's been the deal where I come from for years, right? They catch you with, they catch you with a gun, and they catch you with, maybe some crack cocaine. Okay, we can give you 30 for the gun, or we can give you 15 for the crack. Which one? Okay, I'll just take the crack. Even if it might not have been yours, that's been one thing they've done. So if you look at everything in totality, it's almost like they took that test site and they brought it to the mainstream. So now these people fighting. I seen the other day right down the street, I seen a Gaston flag next to a black the blue flag. It's like, how do you even do that? Where is the cognitive, ability to put those two things together?
Yeah, right.
But you're almost destroying that narrative, right? Of this law and order. I'm like, when you talk about the Second Amendment being eroded, because I'm a big Second Amendment guy, right? When you see about there, who you think old Joe and Cop Mala are coming to your house to take your guns? No, the blue is gonna take your guns. The
blues from the hood.
They're trying to
People from-
federalize
Exactly.
the police.
Definitely.
Like listen to the media. They are anti-cop, defund the police, all of the mainstream media. That never is that there's no criticism of like the Capitol Police, the expansion of the Capitol Police, federal sentences, and expanding the Capitol Police beyond just Washington, D.C. So I think that defund the police is directly a ploy to try to defund the police, but bring in the federal police.
I totally agree with you. And I've thought that for a while, but what you're saying makes me realize something else. So when you hear the defund the police, and I have thought that, like, what'll take up that funding vacuum, or that authority vacuum, or that law and order vacuum, it's definitely going to be calling in the National Guard, which they're doing to hospitals and stuff like that now. But I couldn't figure this last little piece out. And I think the Gabby Petito thing is probably going to play into this, but that, so when they say defund the police, they also say we need a kind of an unarmed police for emotional problems, for mental problems. And I had a call or a tweet or something say to me that when you do it that way, before you even get into the situation, you're making the call whether you're going to bring violence there or not. So if it's totally like you can handle it with just a negotiation, then you're going to send in the soft and cuddlies without the guns. But if there's anything screwy, then and you call in the guys with the guns, then you've actually created this force where every time those guys are called in, they're going to consider this, that it's an armed and dangerous situation. They're going to be SWAT teams. They're going to be locked and loaded. But with you, what you're saying is they are going to be the feds.
And how often do you have some sort of like racial issue come up with a local police force, and they're automatically, oh, the FBI needs to, DOJ needs to investigate. There needs to be an investigation. There needs to be a partnership. Do you ever hear any criticism of FBI operations? Any of that in the media? No. My theory, my hypothesis is that they're wanting to move it to a federal police force.
Yeah, they have the Capitol Police in where you're at, correct? I want to say they have a Capitol Police
where you're at.
They're all over the place, and it's a further continuation of the erosion of states' rights. The one thing they hate is bring it back to the anarchist type of deal, which more so is empowering local, governments, if you can, to a certain extent, right? Everything should be handled kind of locally for the most part. I like Eric July. He's I don't know if you ever heard of Eric July.
Yes, I've had him on my show.
Oh yeah, he's pretty dope. But that's one thing he says: break it up, right? That's
but they out here, if you say states' rights, that is racist. Like I would not even say it in my kid's school.
And ID too. IDs are racist too.
IDs are racist.
You can't have the.
You can't
not
expect
vax
everyone
passports.
to be able to write their name down on a piece of paper.
But not vaccine passports. Those,
I know
No,
that
I
you
don't
can
care.
get that.
That's
Every
safety.
homeless person can get that.
yeah, that's safety.
But yeah, the states' rights thing, that a concept of subsidiarity, which is it's really a moral position that the actor himself should be the one who's responsible, and if you have responsibility, you have to have authority. Like you can't go to jail for something that you had no control over. So responsibility and authority have to come together, and they have to go where the actor is, where the person who's making the decision. And that's like a Catholic concept called subsidiarity, where the lowest, at the most grassroots level is where the authority and the responsibility has to lie. And only if that really doesn't work, does it go up, like from the kids working it out as siblings to go to the dad, go to the priest, whatever. That's subsidiarity. And that's what you're talking about. And that is it's so under attack. It's out here, which is like front runner, I think. It's, they're paving the way for it to not even, you can't even discuss it without being considered a white supremacist. And honest.
You're a white supremacist, aren't you?
I mean, but here's the thing. Why not
it.
make some state, if that's your problem, then why don't you make some states that are black supremacist and give the states' rights there? You know what I mean? Like, why not? Because there was a black separatist, I forgot what his name was, but he wanted Mississippi. And he's like, we just make Mississippi all black. And then David Duke wanted the same thing. It's like, why don't you just make Mississippi all black? but my point is just that states' rights doesn't have to be, it just doesn't, it has nothing to do with that. You can, I mean, Texas is, I think Texas might be half Spanish, first generation Spanish speakers.
Hispanic. Yeah.
When I was there, and I mean, that's not going to be white supremacist, even if you have states' rights pretty soon. But it's gonna be blue supremacist because all these LA folks are moving to Texas.
It's a dog whistle. It's a word that you can just throw out there. A lot of times, what I've encountered in that cesspool called Twitter is a lot of people would just throw out buzzwords in order to avoid an actual debate, a nuanced debate. When you say certain words, people bag out. I remember recently, I was going at somebody, I think they had actually California again, passed a bill against stealthing, right? Basically where somebody is having sexual intercourse, somebody, and they slide off the contraceptive, and that's considered like you can civilly sue somebody out there now. They just passed that bill, right? I'm like, a comment I made under somebody's post was basically, from a legal standpoint, not to deal with the emotion, because I think it's a despicable thing to do, but from a legal standpoint, how can you enforce that? How can you prove is there a witness there that said you agreed to have the condom on the whole time? And or did you sign some paperwork? Like, it's just going to bog down the already bogged down legal system, correct? And the first thing some blue-haired person with the pronouns in their bio is like, oh, you sound like a potential rapist. So that's some rapist.
I was about to say that they've already started to pave the way with rape, especially on college campuses, rape accusations, and the kangaroo court Yahoo thing that they have on college campuses. Basically, it's believe women, they're the victim. Why would they lie? And I'm like,
but you know what? It backfires on them, because, like I said, in my situation, when she did that, I'm like, okay, I see this is not, you're not coming in good faith with an argument, correct? You're just like, oh, and when I said something, I'm like, no, I'm just making legal precedents. She's like, oh no, that's some rapist. I say, you're a rapist. I said, well, let me ask you this:
is she a bad?
Are all black men rapists to you? And
I was blocked.
I was blocked after that. Yeah, that was it. So I flipped it, because he's like, oh, okay, you want to play this? You're not coming in good faith. You're coming with these buzzwords, these stereotypes. Okay, so let's play that game. And as soon as I said that, it was bye-bye. Okay. Oh my God, somebody might see I'm racist. Let me block this.
I invented a Jeopardy category at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns because like every time I heard Fauci speak, I thought it would fall under the category things a rapist would say. Like, what is just let this happen? What is why are you resisting? What is just accept it?
But he's the science, so
He's the
obvious.
He is. He's a man of science.
The science, yes.
That's what you seen that post. The science. It went from being science, right? Basic science to the science, right?
Capitals,
Yes.
right? Capital letters.
Yeah.
Do they put science in capital letters? I'm telling you, these are holy texts. They're written in Greek, and only the priests can read them to us. If we try to read them, say, "I speak Greek." Well, how do you speak Greek, you plebe? You might speak Greek, but you're not a priest, so you don't know how to interpret it. I'm like, well, but you're lying, and I know that.
As a member of a marginalized community, it is not my job to educate you. Educate yourself. I love that one on Twitter.
But you're not allowed to do your own research. Like those are the 4 words that they have now demonized. Do your own research is like white supremacy.
Oh, but when you do your own research and you come back to them, no, you're not a scientist. Oh, no, you don't have the magical piece of paper that says your opinion should matter. I don't care how many books you read, how many documentaries you watched. No, you don't have the magical piece of paper,
There's a consensus with the COVID protocol and yada, yada. And it's like, well, these scientists, these medical experts, is not those ones. It's like, oh, okay. So only the medical experts that agree with your position.
And with the vax mandates, that everybody who has that position is out. Anybody who wouldn't take it no longer has a position of authority. So it's like, well, she was disgraced. She was fired. She was dismissed.
Yeah.
She no longer works there. It's like, well, that's, a little circular.
But the insanity of it all is some of the people who are like the PCR testing Carrie Mullis, who called Dr. Fauci pretty much ignoramus in so many words.
Called him an asshole. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, and that's
why he's dead, I think.
Yeah, right before this all happens. Yeah.
August 2019, for crying out loud.
Or Dr. Malone, who invented the mRNA technology, and you see what he said recently, and it's just like, oh, no. The guy who invented these things, these people that invented these things aren't right. No, you have to listen to these guys. It's just completely cognitive disillusion. It doesn't even fit.
If with any treatment protocol, whether it be potential like hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, obviously are the big ones.
Bleep. It's bleep.
I bleep.
Yeah, it's over with now. We done said all the magic words on this podcast. It's a wrap. I'm not gonna try.
I don't really post anything to YouTube anymore, so it doesn't matter to me. But just want to save anybody who can still save themselves, might as well.
And I mean, even certain vitamins, it's like guns come out. They're like, no, those don't work. There's no studies. And my thoughts on it is like, okay, why do you care if a physician and their patient decides to try this treatment? This is all FDA approved drugs that are out there. Why is this such a big? That's what fascinates me more than I don't know if those protocols work.
They're approved for human use, and there are dosages listed. So I don't know what they're thinking, and I don't understand why the fuck they care when they're all jacked up with that. So they can can't they put a mask on, get the jab, whatever.
Yeah,
like can't I
that's
just have
where
a
I
restaurant
get
of my own?
suspicious.
Can't I just go to the restaurant that's open only to people like me? Like, why is that such a big deal? But I wanted to ask you one thing point out something about the FBI conversation before. Can we go back? You were saying how nobody criticizes the FBI, and I think you're onto something there with that police federalization, which it's definitely been on my radar for a long time. But they had like the whole Comey thing, where Comey has like this entertainer or God, like he's really tall and he stands in tall trees and he sits with this man spread thing. It's very weird and dominating. Things a rapist might do. But he's like this FBI God guy. And now they had those chicks. So this was another thing about believe the woman, believe the woman. So they put that in your mind. And then, so they say, believe the woman with the Nasser thing, that the gynecologist for the Olympics, who was definitely, I mean, I don't think there's any question that he was a gross pig and did awful things to young girls, but he's only convicted for a few of them, but hundreds of them get to like share the money and say whatever they want. And some of them who I think were actually party to the suits, so they have more credibility. They went to Congress and they started not just giving their testimony, giving their opinion on policy. And then this Facebook chick last week, like the whistleblower, she wasn't just saying I was this person who had information. She was saying we need to reframe the regulations for this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, fuck you. Like, what? Why? But they put women in there so that it could, like, this believe the woman thing, to have that kind of so you can't question them. But the Nasser chicks, I'm sure they'd love to be called that. Sorry, that's not right. But let's call them Nasser victims. They were saying that, like, we need some accountability at the FBI. And I'm like, really? Like, you know all about the FBI? So I think what they do sometimes is they'll pull out a few bad apples just to show, look at how seriously we take a couple of bad apples at the FBI. Your local cops are complete pieces of shit, but these guys are paragons of virtue. Meanwhile, the FBI is totally unconstitutional, should not exist. There are almost no federal crimes in the Constitution. Treason, I think, counterfeiting, piracy. And so it shouldn't exist at all. But I think you might be right. I think they might be, because I couldn't figure out why they were going after the FBI, but I think they're just going after them to show, in such a big organization, there's just a few bad apples. I think we're cracking a very horrible code here, but I think you're right.
Well, and and all the cases that they keep getting brought into are very politicized type of cases, political disputes or whatever. I mean, in my opinion, why doesn't the FBI, I don't know, like child abductions or human trafficking across, that seems like that is what that organization should be used for, but that's not where the majority of the resources go.
Did you ever hear of the Franklin cover-up or the Boys Town thing? That was like the original pedo thing. There's a book called Franklin Cover-Up. And the idea was that there was a boys' town, like orphanage or charity, whatever. And they would take kids from there and abuse them, use them really, I think, to the point where some were killed. And a part of it was that they would take them to like a congressional freshman party. So all the new freshmen come in. They basically slip everybody roofies, throw a little boy in their bed, take pictures, and then you pretty much get what you need from those people. So I don't know if that's really what happened, but basically that's what in this book, which was pretty believable. But the people, the young people, teenagers, whatever, who blew the whistle and testified, just like, well, that's a different story, but they were the only ones who went to jail. They went to jail for perjury or whatever. But yeah, so they're not only not, I mean, that's my greatest concern. Like the Denny Hester thing, he was the Speaker of the House, but he was like, he would have like boys from Thailand flown in to this apartment that I think was bugged by the FBI and stuff. And that's when I realized, like, why is it that you don't want the police to be federalized? One reason is maybe they'll, you know, like you ever see in this post office and in the service and stuff, there's a lot of immigrants, which I love immigrants. All of my grandparents are immigrants, but if you want to disconnect people from the kind of humanizing or service or the foundational laws or whatever, like the best thing to do is just have somebody slide in above those formative years. So there's that problem. So the more it gets outside of your community, the less they understand what you mean by your gestures or your words. And that's a big, big problem if you want any kind of humanity in policing. But the other problem is when you have something like the Denny Hester thing, I believe it was local cops who saw the funny business there and said, and they just had to stop because the FBI had I think this is how the story went. The FBI had the apartment bugged but really we're just doing it to use against him, I think, like for blackmail and everything. But it was the cop, I believe it was the local cops who saved the kids or blew the whistle on it. So it's just a way to have that kind of subsidiarity concept for checks and balances, because if it's just one centrally controlled organization and the person at the top has all the information, they can just take you out. It's like transitioning from soldiers to drones. Some soldier isn't gonna do the job on the ground. It's very hard to just pull him out of his seat and put somebody else in his seat. Like, it's a big problem. But when you can just interchange from the top and nobody knows, nobody's there, it's removed. So there's a lot of problems with this. And I think our eye is really off the ball. And, maybe we should rethink about always focusing. I focus on the vaccine, the COVID thing all the time because I live in LA and it's ruining my life. I mean, I thought my life was ruined last month, the month before, last year. Every day it's something worse. Every day. I went to the store today. Everybody's wearing a mask. People are bitches. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, so fucking mean. I'm like, it's like Twitter. It's like, do you think that I'm not a human being because I don't know if you're one of the moms from soccer. Like, why are you being mean to me? Never would be mean to you like that if they had to look in your face and you thought they might recognize you. And so I feel like this stuff is so all encompassing. It's really World War III. And look at all the laws that changed that had nothing to do with war, but right onto shit like FDR, like that whole thing of depression and war to fundamentally transform the basic type of government that we had from being like a federalist system based on freedoms and the Constitution to something that was, I would say, European in nature.
Well, under the PrEP Act, emergency issuance of the PrEP Act, basically the Secretary of Health has all-encompassing purview to mandate, put into place all these different regulations, and then also provide immunity for not only the vaccine providers, but also for any of the manufacturers. There's a lot of purview that they have, that the power was given to them underneath this PrEP Act. My concern is we keep hearing climate change is an emergency that keeps coming up over and over again, that this same statute is going to be expanded to that. Would not surprise me at all. And basically with this PrEP Act, this isn't going to end until 2024, I believe. October 2024 is when you read through it, that's kind of when those powers are that they no longer have them. So
and the climate stuff is total crap. And that,
definitely.
like, now that I'm in LA, I just see those chemtrails. I'm sorry, I don't want to blow your show up with chemtrails, but if you lived out here, I mean, you can't deny it. Like, even the normiest of normies, I'm just like, oh, you think it's going to rain tomorrow, but you see how the clouds just went like that, and there's all that silver shit in front of it. Like, they're pushing the clouds down so it doesn't rain. The fires, I'm like, they should really be fighting that fire at this point, and they don't. Like, it's total dystopia out here, really, like, really. And I mean, that's my observation, and I really stand behind it. Like, I don't like it. I don't want to believe it. I was like a very late comer to the chemtrail thing until I was just like, holy shit, like, I didn't want to take a shower. So I was wondering if COVID was that for a while, because it all came down and I started seeing that. So, but when you see what they're actually doing to the earth, the big T they, because you see John Brennan talking about it. There's a YouTube video of him talking about how unbelievably cheap geoengineering is. He had no idea when they finally showed him the program and told him how much it costs. It's like, so they don't, like, the whole, this is what I try, like, people don't understand who buy into the communist thing, or buy into, which is a word I absolutely hate, but like, buy into this idea of centralized control of everything, or the climate thing, or the equality, all that kind of stuff. It's not just like the people who talk about it don't mean it at all. Like they are not driven by that. All the little bureaucrats underneath them who want to bullshit their way to the top. It's probably like the way the Masonic thing works, where like all the people are like, sure, I want to be like a good guy. It's like, well, you get to level up if you don't really want to be a good guy, or you're willing to compromise, level up, to the point where eventually when you're at the very top, you're like, oh, if we talk about climate and race and equality and poverty and all and health, and we'll get everybody on board. But what we really want to do is make sure that they're all clients, that they're all like, I literally think up is down. Like I literally think that I think everybody here probably thinks that they use the healthcare system to make you sicker. They are using the geoengineering to fuck up the planet. They're doing all that so you can't grow your own food. Like they're doing it all as opposite. And even with the communist thing, like that famous now World Economic Forum article that said, I have no privacy, I own nothing, and I'm happy. And it's just beautiful. And I just loved her like a white shirt, if I recall correctly. She has a very white shirt and everything is clean. And I'm thinking, so there are international airport terminals in Europe that are all the same. They're basically white lacquer, chrome, and blue neon, and they're very clean looking. And you kind of feel like you're in the future, and it's a little bit cool. And then, so I went to LAX recently, and everything's shut down. Like most of the restaurants, maybe it's better now, I can't remember. But it was like, there was one restaurant and it was like, everything was prepackaged and nobody was coming out from behind the counter. And there was just food and schmutz and everything all over the floor. It was so disgusting. And I was like, this is what happens when it's purely regulatory. There's no competition. You have no choice. There's no other place to get food here. Why? Because they got the contract. They paid double to somebody who were like Atlanta had a huge airport scandal. There's so much money in getting a contract like that. You would easily give somebody $1 million to be the guy who sells the cheap, shitty sandwiches for $20 each. But if there's absolutely no competition, it's the competition. So everyone's like, oh, greed. Greed drives productivity, and competition checks the greed so that everybody keeps entering in. I want to make the money. How? I want to get more customers. How? Better, cheaper. And the more it gets distanced from that, the more it goes up. You can see it right now of all times. It's like just been 1 year and everything's shut down. Are you getting stuff better and cheaper? And it's all about giving away free money and government control of every last thing. And it's not, we are still looking at the world that capitalism built. It's not going to take very long before you look around. Have you ever been broke? If you're really, really broke and you live in a house, you can't fix anything. You can't fucking fix the leaks. You can't paint. It's not clean. I mean, you can neaten stuff up, but if you don't have the money for like stuff to clean and paint and everything, you're sewing stuff up. Like that's what happens. That's why everything's clean and nice, is that we have a lot of wealth. But as soon as that starts going away, it's going to look like shit. And people think that they're going to get more, but they're not. And I'll give you one other little tidbit. As they push this stuff down into Zoom and telemedicine and all that stuff, and you think that you're going to get your stimmy checks and get this cushy job and I can work from home, all of a sudden, as soon as they do that, the workforce is global. So you're paying first world rent, and they are going to bring the wages down to third world wages. Anybody, anywhere. And that's why I feel like you see all this stuff like teach the children how to code. I'm telling you, every think tank, every big philanthropy website has a picture of the girl, the beautiful, clean, young child in Africa in traditional garb, but very, very clean, sitting behind a desk with a laptop. I'm so happy now. And I'm like, you're a coding slave. I'm sorry to tell you that. And I don't think your little outfit's going to be clean for very long, because they're not going to care about you anymore because the picture's over and they got what they want. So I feel like I not to be dystopian. I'm really just trying to articulate these things as I observe them, because if you can get, the way I figure it, we got to get a little bit ahead of it, because yes, this iron, I call it the iron shroud, is descending over the earth. It's not an iron curtain that's separating east west, it's this iron shroud of this centralization. And what do you have to do? Maybe it's like the 70 years of Russian communism that we're about to enter into, or maybe it's 7 years, or maybe it's 7 months. I don't know. But what do you have to do? You have to hold the line on what you can. And you don't, I think you have to be aware of where it's heading. so that you can alert to the things that are, oh, that's happening now. I might have to go to town hall or get a gun or learn to grow chicken. I do think we have to become a little more active.
The black pill.
The UN, the
I don't mean to be a black pill. No. And
no, the black pill is the right pill.
I don't think so. I'm a pink pill. I'm a pink pill. I'm the red
Michael
pill.
Malice. You go Michael Malice with the white pill. It doesn't either.
No, I'm not like that. Oh, the government's incompetent. No. I'm just saying human existence has been a battle to kick the can of tyranny. And if we're not just animals, and if there is a nobility of man, it is now our time to identify that, bring it to the fore, and battle these evil forces to the extent we can on an individual basis, or use the processes that our ancestors have secured for us through the Bill of Rights or whatever, just to be active in that way. And I hate that. As I said, I'm an agoraphobic agorist. I don't like going out at all. I did like last fucking thing I want to do is go to City Hall. So that might not be right for me. If I can get like 2 people, if I can tell the world like my truth and 2 of you will go to City Hall, like, does that relieve me of my burden to go to City Hall? I hope so, because I don't think I'm even that person. I did march against Obamacare 3 times and I'll never stop talking about it for as long as I live, because like that was the most political action I have ever seen in my life. But I do feel like I'm not black pilled because I feel like I'm such an individualist, such a libertarian, that I feel like the hope always has been in your own integrity and character and hopefulness, whatever. I'm not trying to like be on a soapbox. I do feel like this is just a personal journey, and we might not even exist. Like, right? Maybe this is just all a dream.
Simulation.
In which case, do my best.
What you got, Amy? I see you the wheels turning over there. Yeah.
So the ultimate end game goal is, so there's the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
That ESG would be the
the World Economic Forum.
Yeah. So ESG would be the financial, stakeholder capitalism aspect of that. I'm like, I know fascism when I see it. Thank you very much.
Their mission statement, the World Economic Forum's mission statement is fascist. Read it.
Yeah.
It's like to institute worldwide fascism. I mean, it doesn't. It says very close to that.
It's and you've got a lot of the same corporate actors that were under some of the fascist regimes. But
oh my gosh.
The SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN, which all backed by World Economic Forum. And if you type in the town that you're in and put sustainable development, the ultimate goal is to create these like mega city hubs where you have where humans are centralized, and it's a net zero plan, and it's very techno surveillance heavy, public transportation for everything. But yeah, if you go and just type in your town and sustainable, it's everywhere. There's plans within every single city, town that's following this model of SDGs. And not that I'm necessarily opposed to having, central planning for communities, but when you're talking about the UN, no one elected these people. No one elected these corporations who've decided that they need to that they need to morally tell us how to be living, etc.
Well, if you look at the CDC, when I saw that the eviction memorandum was been held up because the CDC says now you can evict people. Like, who the hell elected the CDC to create legislation? Where did that come from? Was I asleep during civics class?
And
I never.
Federally. But did you notice that Rosa Quar Rosa Quar did Behind the Green Mask? She was a real estate. She was the land assessor in, I think, LA, someplace in California. And she saw all these things coming down decades ago. And boy, she woke me up to that. I had her on my list. I tweeted at her a couple of times, and like this, she died like in April. She was in a rally in Austin, and in May she said, "Pray for me," and she was just dead, and she laid all this stuff out.
Yeah.
You might want to.
Oh, and they're looking to own the food as well. I mean, you've seen a lot of it, like with Monsanto and all the GMO stuff and all the controversy that's gone around
Amy
with
digs
that.
in the SEC fight. We're gonna reveal that. That's one thing that Amy is excellent at is deep diving and research, and that's why we keep her around. On top of the looks.
Bring
Good
that.
job.
Well,
Yeah,
I will.
SEC.
I don't listen to a lot of podcasts because I want to be able to think through my issues myself. Otherwise, if I listen to Michael Malice all the time, I would just be like, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have original insights at all. So I have to not listen to that stuff like me. I can't listen to, but stuff that gives a different perspective or does a lot of research. I am all about it. So you gotta do a lot more of that.
Oh, mRNA is going to agriculture.
Ooh.
There's patents and there's filings for within the SEC. So I don't know what is going to come of that. What the long-term plan.
That's interesting because Malone, he was the guy who brought mRNA to vaccines, and I heard him say on Del Bigtree, the problem with the vaccine isn't the mRNA; it's that they chose the spike protein. But the second version of the vaccine will probably be okay. I was like, really?
Oh, they merging them now. They're throwing everything.
So,
it's a cocktail now.
Maybe we're trying to get mRNA. I guess that's just going to be part of everything. And this is what drives me crazy about the central planning thing is that people who believe in the power and promise of big government and want research and, you're paranoid, whatever. It's like, you know what? They got this technology. They didn't even really iron all the kinks out, and they just couldn't fucking wait to just spooge it all over everybody. And just everybody gets it everywhere now because, and just to use it for ill, they could not wait and just roll it out in an orderly fashion with FDA approvals to help people with cancer, whatever. They had to just say, oh my God, I think we can do this right now. Let's just do it right now. And that's why they can't be trusted, because look at what they do with their power and their knowledge. It's crazy. Now you're bumming me out about the food, because that's kind of what I think the chemtrails are part of, and the fires and everything, is they just really want to have total control over the land and how it works and how you access it, how you can use it independently.
Yeah, there's some big issues actually going on in India right now over farming practices and using patented products and a lot of issues there, because basically what it is if you're going into this program, and of course Gates is part of it, if you're going into this program and buying into it, you have to follow their farming protocols, and it essentially puts you in kind of this indentured farming you're not farming in the way that you want to farm. You're not growing the products that you want to grow. And so,
but that's part of how you control it. If the fastest growing population of any city is always the poorest population. And that's the people they want to reduce the population, reduce them reproducing, right? And you're not going to stop these people from having sex. It's not going to happen, right?
They got nothing else.
Yeah. So the second thing you would go to after you create food deserts is we're going to provide the food to you, and this food may or may not, slow down your reproduction. It may or may not be good for your reproductive organs. It may or may not help
Look
you.
up Epicite.
Yeah.
Epicite, EPICYTE. Have you ever seen that? It's corn that sterilizes men. Why would you ever invent that? What moral position could anyone ever be in? You know what I mean? Why would you ever do that?
Yeah.
How could that be
we were
something
going Alex Jones in a minute.
Giving...
You turn the frogs gay. Yeah.
But it's true. But Bill Gates is doing the food. The guy whose number one stated goal pretty recently was to reduce the population is in charge of all the food and medicine.
Mm-hmm.
That's also stated in the early on UN documents. I mean, they've rephrased it. Now it's family planning and,
but who's doing the planning?
Women's rights. Yeah, exactly.
Dang.
All right. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. You already gave us more time than you did a lot for us, Mrs. Perez. You know.
Well, I do. I have to keep a tight schedule so that I get all the hall passes I need because it's early for me out here, and I always have to get dinner on the table and
sun over there and everything. I'm like,
no, it's really nice right now. But anyway, so I try to juggle the whole like be a good mom thing and be a good podcaster thing. So my time is not my own, but I really, really enjoy it. And I'm so looking forward to this new podcast. Like it's right up my alley. I just love diving deep and not being afraid of saying words, but you probably do need to get like a bleep button for whatever, because I know
I'm gonna edit the hell out of this.
Are you okay? So any kind of vulgarity you can just totally bleep.
Well, I'm fine with vulgarity. We just trying to avoid
but literally I have like some of my listeners are priests and like good Catholics, and Catholics can't handle vulgarity. You can't curse or swear.
Well, that's where the balance comes from. You're for the good Catholic priests, and we'll be the after dark, you know. And I think they still listen to the profanity late at night too. Don't let them confuse you. They listen to
okay. Well,
so we'll keep the balance.
That sounds fair.
Maybe you can get us on get us a slot on the union of the one day. They need to throw in some
I always like to make connections. I really do, because that is one thing, like in the beginning of this conversation, you're asking about like media and are we the only hope? And I feel like we are actually, I think there is, even though it's very hard to herd libertarians or open-minded individualists, but I think there's strength in numbers, and these kind of podcasting networks at a certain point, it would be your ideas like spread around to other people. And so they take one person down, but it'll be like whack-a-mole. They're just really not going to be able to keep, there's just enough of an audience now that they're not going to be able to keep the critical thinking down. So I'm pretty happy about that. I'm very happy to make connections.
Definitely. I got to thank you again. Got anything, Amy, in closing?
Not anything different. Definitely wheels are turning for the next conversation that we have.
It's gonna be deep.
So I'd like to share this with my patrons. So if you want to tell people about how like your Twitter handles and stuff, I'm at Monica Perez Show. Definitely. And then maybe we get some cross-pollination.
Well, definitely. And like I said, if you want to plug anything, like I said, I always give the last minute to the guest, you know. So if anything you want to say or plug, definitely throw it out there right now. Once again, I got to thank you for coming on.
What we're doing is our podcast is called The Propaganda Report. It's me and my co-host, Brad Binkley, and we do a lot of extra stuff. Patreon.com/propaganda report has every day. We have a 45-minute daily news show, commercial free. We have interviews, we have patron-only Q&A, we have live cocktail parties, which disappear forever. So maybe you'll have to join us for one of those, really let our hair down. There's usually a couple of trolls here and there. So I don't know if you really trust it, but we do take it down and people go kind of nuts in there. We have Zoom parties where the top tier, we all get together on Zoom and really get into some of these deeper subjects. And then we also are on rockfin.com/propaganda report, where we did our first live on video drive time news blast, which is our daily show. And it was really fun so that we could actually close it up with some Q&A. So we'll have to do some cross-pollination on these great platforms. So thank you very much. Definitely. And you tell us what is this is the first episode of the new Dystopia.
Very first. That's what I said. We're jumping out big with you coming on. So I greatly appreciate that. Like I'm still at this point where I'm setting up all the socials and Amy might be better at social media than me. She's like tripled my Twitter followers.
How do we find your social media, Amy?
At Amy B Phoenix. In fact, actually, I'll share I can't share the screen. But yeah, at Amy B like the insect, and like then Phoenix. Okay. Yeah. And I'm on there all the time. I have 4,500 followers right now. I guess there's some people who find me interesting.
Yeah, that's not easy.
Impressive.
I'm on there a little too much. I did have another an account previously, but apparently it pissed off some, trans feminists.
Really?
Yeah, decided
You
to
have
go
to be
couldn't
very,
imagine.
very nice. Twitter's the only thing I haven't been deplatformed from. You have to be very nice on Twitter, which is very hard
Yeah.
to do because people are mean and baiting you all the time.
Oh yeah, I'm terrible.
Yeah,
I'm terrible.
I'd tick it. Yep.
I'm not mean at all. Like that's my fatal flaw. Like I'm not mean. Even when I was on the radio, I was like, I said, well, I'm never going to be mean. They're like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm really not going to be mean to the callers or anything because you've got to argue. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to argue. Like, I still got taken off the air. That's probably why I got taken off the air.
I
Definitely.
tendency to be sarcastic. I've gotten nicer. I've gotten nicer on Twitter.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
Well, I'll say I did follow you recently, so we'll see.
All right, so it's been a pleasure, ladies. Thank you once again, Miss Monica Perez, for coming on for the first episode, and
Yay.
we'll definitely be shooting the links and everything once we get everything together. So that's all I got. So
Yeah, this has been a
Fantastic.
long
Thank you
time
so
coming.
much.
all right, thank you. Play this video one more time. We'll outro you with the video. Appreciate you.
Welcome to the edge of the hole of abyss where we stand on the ledge and we hope we don't slip, but we all trying to cope, not focused on shit, always scoped on the fix that is fixed to our wrist, and the cyst that persists from the clicks that we get is a ship that's adrift in the midst of the grift. What a trick, what a gift, what I miss, shit, ignorance is bliss, bliss.
Welcome to the realm where they complicate pursuits, confiscate the truth to indoctrinate the youth. Got us hopped up on the juice cause the doctor's about the loot. Posture of imposters cause our options are acute. Playing possum for the boot, it's lost in the obtuse. You constantly and constant for the optics you can